Hi, so this evening I had the chance to watch a Thursday night preview of Free Guy. This movie was supposed to come out last year as Deadpool so hilariously mentioned in his reaction to the trailer for this. And okay, I'll start off by saying I enjoyed this film. It was a lot of fun. I wouldn't mind seeing it again. It was lighthearted, but at the same time, it had some pretty important messages, sort of themes that ran throughout the story. Now, oops, sorry, gotta take my medicine. Okay, so what was I saying before I got interrupted by my medicine alarm? Oh yeah, I was saying that there were some kind of sort of serious themes woven throughout, but it was, as a whole, it was a comedy. There was some conflict in it. Obviously, there's supposed to be. You already know, if you've seen the trailer, you know what the conflict is about. But there were different things that were also at play besides what we saw in the trailer. And also something, oh yeah, I know what I was going to say that it kind of slipped my mind. I think if you're a gamer, if you're really into gaming, you'll probably enjoy this film. I don't know, maybe not. I mean, I'm not into gaming, but I still enjoyed this film. So I can only imagine that gamers will like it for the nod to gaming and the nod to popular gamers. There were several cameos by people who I assume are well-known gamers, Twitch streamers or whatever. I recognized at least one of them because that particular person has also delved into the world of ASMR. I believe that's the same person. There were people in the audience who seemed to recognize other people that popped up as cameos playing themselves. And so I think that will be appreciated by people who like to watch that sort of thing. But also something that I was reminded of as I was watching this movie is, I want to say it felt like work to be there, but honestly, not really, because, I mean, it's a totally different sort of medium, right? My work in audiobooks deals primarily with the genre, the exploding genre called lit RPG. Interestingly enough, I'm not really a fan of lit RPG. It's not something that I gravitate toward. I work on the books and I enjoy some of the books, but in general, it's just not my thing. So that's kind of what I meant when I said, like, oh, it felt like work, because it delves into the same sort of scenarios that I'm often introduced to throughout the course of my work. But anyway, this reminded me of one of the lit RPG series that I have worked on. Not done with it yet because there's a couple more books yet to be recorded, and it's called The Feedback Loop by Harmon Cooper. I have mentioned this probably I know I've done it at least once, maybe twice, but there were some interesting concepts touched on in that particular book. I really enjoyed that series, and I'm looking forward to working on it again. But in the story, the protagonist is stuck in a game. He's in a feedback loop. His day keeps repeating. So it's part of the reason why I really enjoyed it too, was it has elements of different stories that I really like. Repeating days. I love that sort of thing. I've always been a fan of that. But anyway, throughout the course of the story, especially the first book, throughout his repeating days, and he's been in the game for more than a year, well over a year, he falls in love with an NPC. And you start to, it's like I mentioned before, you know that this NPC is not real. It's just a bunch of code. But at the same time, the NPC acts like a normal human being, has all the emotions of a human, and this character in the book falls in love with her, has attachments to her, and even when he's outside of the game world, when he finally makes it out, spoiler alert, but there's other books in the series, so it's not a complete spoiler. When he finally makes it out, he still has these attachments to her. Even though he knows she's not real, he gets all that, but at the same time, he can't deny the fact that he has formed this very human bond with this piece of code. And so elements like that are touched on in this story as well. I was thinking about that while I was watching it. Ryan Reynolds is, unbeknownst to himself, he's an NPC, and he sort of kind of goes rogue. I mean, he starts to behave, think like a human being and make his own decisions, and that just kind of throws everything into turmoil in the game world, and people outside the game start to notice. And then you have these characters, the girl that goes in the game, she's in there for a very specific reason, and she forms an attachment to him, and he forms an attachment to her. But something that I really appreciated about this as well was that at the end, it comes back around to, I don't want to say too much and give away the reason that certain things went on the way they do. It's answered at the end. I like that they tie it up in an understandable and, not understandable, but it's a reasonable explanation as to why things happened the way they did, involving certain people outside and inside the game. I'm trying to be super vague, but in a lot of ways, this movie was a combo of different things. It was an action story, but what made the action here really cool was that it takes place inside a game. So it doesn't matter how completely insane the stuff is. It's a game world. You know, they can do all sorts of crazy stuff, and you don't have to think to yourself, oh, well, there's no way they could have done that. It doesn't matter. That goes completely out the window. That's not an issue. So I like that. And so not only is it an action movie, but it's also sort of it's got a touch of character drama in it. It's also got some, character drama with regard to the characters outside the game and what's going on, like Taika Waititi. I'm sure I've said his name. I can never, if it's Tika or Taika. I've heard it pronounced both ways, and I know I've said it wrong before. Anyway, whatever. That dude, you know who I'm talking about. He's so douchey in here. So there's stuff going on with his character and the other humans in the outside world. So there's that. So like action, some character drama, character sort of, I don't want to say like suspense. Oh, sorry. Hold on a second. My dog wants to get down. Okay. Character dynamics, character friction that's happening. So there's these different levels of conflict that keep things really interesting. So the two things I already mentioned, action, some character stuff going on, character drama / whatever. And then it's also in a lot of ways a love story. That's not, well, I was about to say that's not a big highlight of the film, but that's wrong, because you can tell in the trailers that there is like this love situation sort of thing going on between Ryan Reynolds' character and her character. But it's also a love story in other aspects. Something else that was, but it's not, it really didn't come across as cheesy and ridiculous, honestly. I thought it was handled very well. It wasn't super cliche. I mean, in some ways it was, but not to the point that it was just like, oh, all right, nothing like that. For me, anyway, that was the impression I got. I was also going to mention, yes, in addition to the cameos by the different gamers, there is one specific cameo that I was not expecting. I wasn't necessarily expecting any cameos, to be honest, but when the gamers showed up, I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. But there's another cameo that happens. It's super brief. It only lasts for just like a handful or less of seconds, but it's freaking hilarious. And pretty much everybody was laughing when it happened. It was so, you'll know it when you get to it, honestly. And I don't want to say it and spoil it, because it was really fun to see it and not know that that was going to happen. But trying to think of other stuff to say about it. I mean, the acting was fun. Ryan Reynolds was Ryan Reynolds. There's some stuff that shows up in the trailer that doesn't make it into the theatrical version. I don't know why, but that's what happens sometimes. Anyway, this feels like a fairly short review. I don't really have a ton to say about this. It's not like it sparked a huge amount of internal thoughts and dialogues. There were things that, I thought about. Oh, I know what I was going to say. It's also kind of sort of a symbolism for people being trapped in a rut, just doing the daily grind, what's expected of them, and yet they want to break free of that, and they don't necessarily know how to, or they're too scared to. So, that's one of the things I was thinking of when I mentioned that it has some sort of serious and important themes woven into this throughout, but it's wrapped up in this really entertaining, hilarious package. Very lighthearted, sweet in a lot of ways, but it's got heart to it, and it's got things in there that kind of make you think, yeah, I can kind of identify with that a little bit with the what it's portraying. So I feel like this is something that a lot of people can enjoy, gamer or not. It's just a fun film. I would say it's family friendly to a certain degree. It's probably PG-13. The violence in here, it's mostly, it's pretty much all the cartoony game violence. There really isn't any blood to any great extent at all. There's a scene where I think Ryan Reynolds gets a bloody nose or whatever, but despite all of the killings and everything that happens throughout the game world, it's not bloody. So, I mean, I guess if parents are worried about their kid being exposed to a lot of blood, that's not really an issue, but there is obviously the cartoony type violence that happens in game worlds, but it's certainly nothing that it's all comedic. There's nothing about it that's really super serious or jolting or shocking or anything like that, because it's in a game world. See, this is part of the reason that I'm not a huge fan of lit RPG, is because it's about games and what's happening in the game. For a lot of the lit RPG books that I've been exposed to, it's nothing that's life or death. It's just a game. And so I don't really feel personally invested and connected with what's going on. There are some that don't fit that typical pattern, and there are real world things involved with the game or as a consequence of the game, serious real world things. And that to me is a hook that can make a genre like this interesting. So like, that's sort of the situation that was going on in here to a certain extent, as far as the real world being impacted by what's happening in the game, or, especially or the game being impacted by what's going on in the real world, especially if you view the AIs as actual people, because they have thoughts and feelings. And, it delves into this interesting territory when it comes to things like that. Obviously, at the end of the day, they are just code. They're not really a real human, but there's certainly some gray area in there, especially if they feel like they're human and they act like a human. So I can see, why there's this conflict at play when it comes to stuff like that. But anyway, it was a fun film. My kids are probably going to want to see it because they both are into gaming, and so I expect I'll be watching it at least one more time on the big screen. And the theater was almost completely full, not totally. I don't know that this movie's going to do huge at the box office. Maybe word of mouth will help it. Suicide Squad didn't do as well as I thought it was going to do. I was really surprised to see that it fell below expectations by a pretty big amount, and I really enjoyed that film. I saw it twice on the big screen, but I don't know. I guess we'll see. Anyway, it was fun. I enjoyed it, and if you guys plan to see it, let me know what you think when you watch it. If you thought it was as fun as I did. I don't know. Seems to have fairly decent audience ratings, but okay, well, I don't have anything else, so I'm wrapping this up and need to get to editing this so I can put it up for tomorrow. Or by the time you see this, it will already be tomorrow. Okay, you guys. Later.